Sometime this week, we heard a very interesting individual say some very interesting things. And so, this video, I want to make sure I isolate the audience real quick. We don't normally do. But for this particular incident, I think it's necessary that we do. Now, I want to talk directly to Black America. I know that I'm coming at you with a little bit of a sordid history for myself where people don't necessarily agree with many of the things I say. But I think an object lesson is needed in this situation. And I think I have the perfect object lesson, along with some historical things that you may or may not have known or conveniently forgotten because they don't want you to remember. I am not going to speak at you. I'm going to hopefully help you see what I'm saying, as well as hopefully you will listen to what I'm saying. And I'm simply going to ask you to put aside the emotional content that you may be carrying around for just a brief second while I divulge what I'm going to talk about. Kathy Hochul recently was caught on microphone during an interview saying something that was quite interesting. Later, when she was asked why she said it, her statement was, "I misspoke." Misspoke. Not that I did not mean that, and that was the wrong thing to say. I misspoke. Now, in case people don't understand what people mean by misspeaking, is that I meant what I said, I just should have said it differently. Not that I didn't mean it, and I shouldn't have said it. That is not how I feel. No, I misspoke. I meant to say what I thought differently, even though that's exactly how I feel. Now, when you hear what she said, and I clear my throat because I have to clear it for her, I think you'll better understand what I mean, because she's not the first to say this, almost the exact same thing, but she is more recent. Take a listen.
Right now we have, young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is. They don't know. They don't know these things. And I want the world open up to all of them.
Well, the last person to ever say that was an individual by the name of Joseph Biden. Do you remember when he was talking about small businesses? And he said that not many of them know how to, or no, wasn't small businesses, as what about the jibbity jib jab. And he said they won't know how to get into line because they don't know how to get online to get in line. Not my words, his.
The other portion is a lot of people don't know how to register. Not everybody in the community, in the Hispanic and the African American community, particularly in rural areas that are distant and or inner city districts, know how to get online to determine how to get in line.
Is there a portion of them that believe that Black people are so inferior that they cannot figure out the internet? Now, last time I checked whether or not people want to believe it, I am of color. And the internet came about during my childhood. I was there before the internet showed up, and I'm here now while the internet is showing up. And I'm pretty sure that I was able to assimilate into said internet culture pretty seamlessly. I don't remember being so ill-equipped that I had to be told, you don't even know how to operate the internet. Then, throughout my time in the last 5-10 years, I've been told that we don't know proper English and we don't know how to do math, and we're the slower learners, and math is racist and English is racist, and requiring people to speak differently is racist because they can't learn to talk. So I want to speak directly to Black America about what they're actually trying to tell you. Now, again, I ask you to make sure that you just park the emotionality for just a minute. 5 at the most. During the days of slavery, it was thought that Black people did not have the intellectual fortitude to figure out what normal white people who owned slaves could do, which was stuff like read and do math. They were not allowed an education. For what purpose? You see, if they knew, then they would be able to figure out that their state on a plantation was absolutely deplorable, and they would have a way to fend for themselves. They could not afford that. So what did they do? They had to put somebody over them who looked like them to tell them that where they were was the absolute best place for them, and that nothing else out there was going to be to their benefit. You see, they had to convince the slave that their brain and their ability inconsequential to the task. They couldn't do it. And many believed it. Now, the few that escaped figured out they were lying to me all the whole time. They were selling me for a profit. They were actually paying less for me than for a dog at times. I was worth less than a dog, but they wouldn't let me know this information. Why? Because what information I could know would be detrimental to their plan. Those same people are now a prominent and permanent part of the Democrat Party. Whether people like to admit this or not, it is the truth. It is factually accurate, documented, printed in stone in some cases that this is true. And if you look around, you will see exactly what I mean. Even 7 years ago, there was a little experiment done by a man named Mommy. He was on the street. He went into New York, consulted with a bunch of people who believed, white people specifically, who believed that black people couldn't even get IDs. They didn't know how to use the internet, kind of weirdly enough, to get an ID. They couldn't get themselves to a DMV. There was no way for them to figure it out because they're not smart enough. In some cases, they even said that black people couldn't get it. Black people couldn't get ID because too many of them were felons.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely. Because they're less likely to have state IDs.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works. How if you're a convicted felon, like you're not allowed to vote and everything. And when you look at swing states like Florida, that's a huge population of the like African Americans.
Now, hear me out. These were people that voted a certain direction. What direction? Democrat. They all think the same thing. Now, when this person went over to ask black Americans what they thought about what they were told about them, the first word that came to mind, these people are ignorant. I know exactly where the DMV. I've had an ID since I was a child. What are they talking about? So what is really going on? Here it is. It is no different today for the Democrats when they look at black America than they were back in the day on a plantation. You are their slave. The reason why all your environments look almost identical in Democrat-run cities is because it is a new plantation. Brand spanking new with the same deplorable conditions. You don't find that odd. You don't find it kind of weird that every time you look and it's called the same thing as well, a ghetto or a project, you don't find that they all seem to have the exact same monikers, the exact same stamps, the exact same layout, the exact same problems? And ironically, all of it seems to be keeping you destitute just like you would be on the plantation. And you don't find it odd that they live, a certain amount of them, live in a certain location with a certain type of people that run that area, in bigger houses. You don't find that odd as well? That they live with the big house people and they make the big house money, but you still live in squalor. You see, the method and the layout of the whole thing is exactly the same. You have one or two people for the Democrats that are white. You recruit a few of the blacks, put them in the house, and the rest of you live on the plantation. They go one step further, though. And this is the portion that you may not recognize. And yes, it all does tie into the computer mindset. Listen carefully. Here's the one part you may not see. Did you know there was a thing called a wench house? Now, this part you may or may not be aware of. A wench house. It was a little shack on the plantation. And what they would do is Massa would go and he would take one of the lady slaves and he would have his way with her. Any child that was a product of that he did not want would be sometimes to the tune of 3 or 4 houses on certain plantations, depending on the size. Now, I want you to keep in mind that these are children that they. Do you know what the mirror image of that is? Almost in every inner city, there are at least 3 to 4 Planned Parenthoods where they execute what? You still don't find that kind of odd. You don't find that they tell you that it is okay to eliminate your children? You see, they can't go in and do it themselves. So what do? They persuade you that it is a format of freedom. Not education being freedom, no. ending yourself is freedom. To the tune of now, to this date, since they implemented that method, 20 million of you are gone. And now they're telling you that you're too stupid to learn the computer. You don't even know what the word computer is. It is not just an one-off. It is not misspeaking. This is exactly what they think of Black America. Even Joe Biden, when he was running, will tell people that by 2030, you won't have the ability to deal with your own problems yourself because you need white people. And without white people, because there'll be less in the population, you're going to have to deal with Hispanics, and they're more diverse than you.
And by the way, what you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things.
If you don't see it by now, I don't think you're ever going to see it. And it's unfortunate for some because some will still listen to this and turn me off as though I'm speaking a lie. But you can go check your own numbers. Since the advent of Planned Parenthood way back in the 30s, to this day, more than 20 million babies have been aborted. And I don't mean just random babies, Black babies. When you do the math, let's just take 50 years. 20 million would easily, if every child only had one more child. What do you think that number would end up being? You see my problem? You are now a population of 40 million, maybe 42. Your number would have been doubled. And I'm just talking about one child having one child, not mention over 50 years, one child having one child, who's having one child, who's having one child. Your population would have been somewhere in the region of 120 million strong. You see, they can't have that though, because 120 million strong means 120 million minds. They cannot have that. You complain about the prison pipeline, right? Okay, you ever realize that the pipeline happens within the same confines as a plantation that you live on? That they have you and they recycle you every time? It's exactly carbon copy, just like it was during slavery, to keep you under wraps. And the only place that happens is in Democrat-run cities. At some point, people are going to have to execute their thinking caps and realize the people that have been telling me for years that I am going to never make it out are the same reasons I will never make it out, because it's by their design. And when somebody who is a freedom fighter tells you you can indeed break free, you plead what? Generational trauma. Meanwhile, generational trauma has nothing to do with it. Unfortunately, it's generational stupidity. But here's the good news. You can easily break that mold. I'm not telling you to vote Republican. I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm telling you to vote wisely. I'm telling you to change. You see, insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. You can't expect a different result if you keep doing the same thing to give you the result you got before. Just saying. Analyze this apart from emotions. Listen to what they actually say. Watch how they talk to you. And see for a minute if they're not trying to, one, either placate or pander to you. Hillary Clinton, what do you keep in your purse? Hot sauce.
What's something that you always carry with you?
Hot sauce. Really?
Yeah.
Does she really though? I ain't don't feel no ways tired. Does she talk like that? No. They gonna put y'all back in chains. Does he talk like that? No. But because of who he was talking to, he knew exactly how to deliver it. Because he works on emotion. They all work on your emotion, which is why I'm asking you to park it for just a minute, because it has been to your detriment. Analyze what's been happening. Look at who's at the helm and look at who they've been using. Look at Mayor Johnson, for instance, in Chicago. I'm going to switch things around. Who does he answer to and what's been happening there? Have you seen any progress for yourself? No, because he is not working for you. He's working for the head house on that plantation. I know many won't listen to me, and I know some will be like, shut up, you coon. I'm expecting it. It doesn't negate the truth of what I'm saying, in regards of whether you want to accept it or not. But for those of you who are willing to execute for just 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour of putting aside the emotional content of your heart linked to your brain and watch for yourself on paper what's happening and listen to what they're telling you, you'll understand exactly who they are. They don't misspeak. They say exactly what they mean. And they just bank on you being emotionally attached to them enough that you'll forgive them for a little Freudian slip. I don't mean to be mean, but at the same time, if I said I loved you, I can't afford to see you damaging yourself, hurting yourself, and sitting idly by and allowing it to take place. I do care. And because I do care, I have to tell you. So for all intents and purposes, while Too Strong might be sellouts, maybe you should invest in what we're actually selling in. Because if we are selling you something that will benefit you, it might be time for you to look at our product.